episode 60 of Top of Mind with Consilio Wealth. Today is Monday, October 14th. We are recording this a little bit early. And on today's call, we're going to be discussing Longshoremen Union, which is still holding out on their negotiations.
And then we got Tesla's robo-taxi event.
We will discuss Social Security tax limits, which have just been increased and announced for 2025.
And Boeing lays off 10% of its workforce, or it's going to lay off 10% of its workforce.
And finally, high-yield savings accounts are dropping like a rock. I just wanted to update on what mine's doing. I bet you're all feeling the same thing.
It's fun while it lasted.
Party was good while it lasted. Exactly. All right, let's go to our first topic here, Hal. So Longshoremen Union still holding out. What are you seeing in the news here? What's going on?
Yeah, longshoremen are people who people who do run the ports, right? And anything we get a big shipment in overseas, they unload it and they put it on trucks. That's their job, right? As you remember during COVID, those are the ports were idle, right? Nothing was really coming in, nothing was going out. And then once everything reopened, those ports were congested. So these are the folks who do all the work that, all of our goods come in, or at least our overseas goods, right? So they went on strike for 2 days a few weeks ago, 2 or 3 days, and that could cause problems, right? Like if you don't get your toilet paper, which there was another toilet paper shortage on the East Coast, and it's just kind of one of the dumbest things I've read about, because toilet paper, for the most part, have read that it's produced domestically, so there's no shipping of toilet paper that needs to go through the ports, right? Like, why would you produce in Tennessee, ship it to the port in New York, and have it shipped to Maine? Like, that makes no sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
But we had a toilet paper shortage. It's just people here, right? So let's get back to the union. They did tentatively agree to a 76% raise over the next 5 years.
Wow.
7.6. That is in line with the West Coast union that agreed to wage increases over 5 years. So they are in line to make quite a bit more money. There's about 50,000 represented employees, or people who are part of the union, that agreed to this. The other sticking point, I know our agenda items said still holding out. They are actually. This is a tentative agreement. And the other sticking point is pretty strong language about no automation of any sort. No semi-automation, right? So the U.S. ports are pretty strong unions. The union leader here is a pretty controversial guy. He makes about $1 million a year. He lives in a pretty nice house in New York, and he is totally against automation. Him and his son. His son works works as representative of the union, making pretty hefty salary. They both want to ensure jobs, these port jobs, will remain forever. So I think that's why the language of no automation.
That is interesting that's the specific call out. We'll agree to this as long as you don't automate.
Yeah.
And you have in here that the U.S. ranks below many other countries around the world when it comes to port efficiency. No U.S. ports are in the top 10 according to the World Bank's Container Port Performance Index. Didn't know that they had a Container Port Performance Index. But the more you know. The top-ranked U.S. port is Philadelphia, which has an overall ranking of 50.
5-0, yes.
5-0, yes. So do you know how other ports work around the world? Are there is there more automation?
Yeah, because of this, the ports around the world are more automated, right? They're just more efficient than the U.S. ports. So it's just kind of the union. I don't know. I'll be pretty blunt about it. Union thuggery about protecting those jobs. It's 50,000 employees. I don't think it's a big base of U.S. employees, but they have the power. They can potentially reignite inflation if they get their way, or keep it humming along, right? And the shutdown, even of just a few days, has caused panic, right? Again, not the smartest bulbs on the drawer are buying loads and loads of toilet paper during the strike, but again, if it were lasting longer, that could be a big issue.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll have to see where this goes. I mean, that agreement, obviously, obviously everyone agrees that these folks are underpaid. If they went up by that much, 76% over 5 years, you said?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just impressive, right? So obviously everybody agreed that they're underpaid. Think about automation.
That's where I can't really stand behind them, because that makes no sense.
It makes no sense. I mean, you'd have less injury. You'd have obviously more efficiency.
Yeah.
Right. You could, okay, maybe there'd be fewer jobs, but those jobs could be higher paying because there'd be less manual labor.
Yeah.
It seems like that's a short-sighted way to look at it.
You remember we were talking on this pod in early 22, mid 2021, and how everything was just really slow to get to where it was supposed to get. Like, I remember you were ordering couches or furniture or something. It took
That's right.
6 months.
That's right. Yeah.
The bottleneck was those guys. They were a major bottleneck. So I did see some polling. Again, I didn't drop it in the notes, but most Americans did not agree with the port workers here.
I remember flying. We flew into LA. I remember reading about all the boats that were sitting outside of LA.
Yeah.
And 60 of them or whatever it was. And like you fly in and on the approach, you see all these cargo ships just sitting out there in the bay.
Yeah, they would go up to Portland and then go to Seattle. So traveling that far would be a lot faster than just waiting your turn in line in LA.
Crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, well, we'll see where this goes. I mean, not necessarily for the no automation. Gosh, let's negotiate that point.
Well, again, look at the standards right across the world. They're obviously one of the worst run ports in the entire world. They take pride in that, I guess. That's an issue.
Okay, so Seattle, Washington, 356 is their score. I don't know what this is out of. To come back here, the Philadelphia
Tacoma,
one was
402.
50. Tacoma, 402. That's the bottom one on the list here.
Yeah, in my neck of the woods, Long Beach, California, 376. Los Angeles, California, 378.
Crazy.
And to be fair, those ports do have some form of automation, but again, very strong union representation. And again, I totally get this is a sensitive subject when you talk about unions, but I brought them up before with traditional car companies trying to convert to EV. The unions are the bottleneck there, right? And they hate when you're doing other jobs outside of like internal combustion engine work, because it's not a union job. All of a sudden, when you're a company trying to convert to electric, the union's in the way because they want to keep making old traditional cars.
Yeah. All right. Well, see where this goes. All right, Tesla's in the news recently. They released their autonomous robo taxi. And interestingly, our team just spent a couple of days down in the Scottsdale, Arizona area on a team retreat, and all over were these Waymo vehicles. Has anybody else seen these things? I think they're predominantly in the Phoenix area. These Waymo vehicles, which look kind of futuristic. It's like a modified Jaguar, and they're totally self-driving. They're pretty cool.
And to be clear, that's not Tesla's product at all.
Yep, good point. Yeah. That's not Tesla's product. So yeah, let's just my immediate takeaway is Tesla stock fell 8% on the news. But why don't we unpack what they released and maybe why markets thought that it wasn't very satisfactory.
I think it helps to set up what nerds call or consider automation. 0 being cars in today's standards, where I got to get in, turn on the key, and then steer it and use the brake and gas. That's a 0 automation car, right? 5 is fully autonomous. I'm guessing it'll pull up to your driveway, it opens the door for you, and you get in the back seat, and it drives you somewhere, right? What they're saying is Tesla had definitely a lot of sizzle, but not enough steak, and their presentation was very high on a lot of promises, but nothing actionable. And on that scale of 0 to 5, it looks like Tesla is nothing, has been nowhere close to level 4, which there are level 4s out there. There's the Waymos, as you mentioned. They're like level 2 to 3 right now, meaning if you're in the Tesla, you have the full self-driving, you still have to touch the steering wheel, or you have to be in the driver's seat to drive it. And Tesla has made very little progress since making, initial promises of robotaxi. I want to say 10 years ago now, 12 years. Yeah, they promised robotaxi or autonomous fleet in 2012 with no timeline. And again, we're getting more of the same, which, to Chris's point, that's why the stock price dropped pretty rapidly.
I mean, I think what I'm hearing here is it's the market waking up to typical Elon, right? He'll come out and he'll make these huge promises, and he'll generally be way ahead based on what he's saying. Like, we're going to do this by this date, and then they're many years behind that. I think all of that, and that's kind of part of his, I don't know, I guess magic. He makes these huge claims on stage, and then he rallies the company around trying to get there. It sounds like this was kind of just digested a little bit lackluster. I think there are companies like Waymo that are seemingly ahead of Tesla in these, and I think that Tesla's maybe expected to have a better product. Sounds like the market didn't think so.
Well, Waymo's logged how many miles in autonomous testing, right?
I don't know, a lot. I thought there was still, I remember when Waymo launched, I think this is right, if I remember it correctly, when Waymo launched, there was still somebody sitting in the driver's seat just monitoring things.
Yeah,
but
we just had a coworker jump into a Waymo car without anyone in there.
Yeah, exactly. So they have obviously regulatory approval, and they're driving fully autonomous, and they aren't required to have somebody behind the wheel anymore. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, and I think that's why investors were in the show me state with Tesla. And again, they're asking questions about these AI darlings as well. It's like, well, you got to start showing us. Yeah. And I think that's what the response was. And then the secondary response is companies like Uber and Lyft. Uber was up 11%, and Lyft was up 10% the next day, because they do have active investment in Waymo, Cruise, and Wave, which they would apply their their infrastructure or their network. Right, they would get rid of the drivers and make everything autonomous.
Yeah, well, Tesla, I mean, who's Tesla's market? Are they trying to become their own rideshare company? Are they trying to sell it to Uber, for example?
Uber doesn't need to buy it. Like, they do have something already up and running, right? Like, why would they buy another, unless it completely drops out. I don't think they would invest in another company to go 5 years back. I think that's probably what the estimation is, right? Yeah. Because to catch up to Waymo, Tesla will need to leapfrog by 5 years, which is not easy. No, not at all.
Okay. What about the bot that came out? What are your thoughts on that thing?
Broadly, I wasn't generally impressed with anything that they released.
Okay, fair enough.
It didn't even look cool. Like, just going back to the Meta stuff, Meta is like ready to ship the stuff that they put out, other than those Ray-Ban glasses. Yeah. But there was a sense of excitement that I felt from the product releases, right? And the demos. There wasn't much demoing going on here, and there wasn't a lot of anything new that was said outside of the outlandish things that have been said, in 2012, that are just more of the same. You know what I mean? So I wasn't broadly blown away like I was with Meta and Zuckerberg. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think that the bot's actually pretty cool if they can get it to work right. Yeah. I think the selling point is there's so many basic tasks that everyone does around their house all the time. And you don't need to be doing that. And it's the simple stuff, right? Washing the dishes, folding the laundry, doing the laundry, picking up the toys after the kids play, these kinds of mowing the lawn, going outside and getting the mail and those kinds of things. And I just think that those basic tasks that aren't worth a wage, having like a household assistant is pretty interesting. Now the question is, are people comfortable with these things in their houses? I don't know the answer to that, but I think that the selling point of like, here's what this could do for you is actually kind of neat. Like, hey, Tesla bot, I've been meaning to wash my windows. So crawl up on my roof and, do the outside. And it doesn't matter if it's raining or not, because hopefully the thing's waterproof. And while you're up there, clean my gutters. It's like, that's actually pretty good. You could put that thing to work for you. So I don't know. I don't know how close that vision is, but I think that was the original vision that was cast. And I think that's actually, it's actually kind of cool.
Yeah. And I think that's all it is at this point, is there's nothing beyond vision, right? Like, how are we going to implement that? How are we going to produce that? How are we going to sell it for? Right? Because what if my house is one story, yours is two? Can a robot extend its legs? Like, you know what I mean? If it's doing those types of things.
Go get the ladder.
Yeah.
If we don't have a ladder, go to Home Depot.
Yeah, and I have the trifold ladder, the gorilla one.
Yeah.
Like, what if you just have like the old fireman ladder from the 1920s, right? Does it know how to prop it up properly? Put up Christmas lights, or, you know what I mean? Like,
another good one.
There's so many different muscle uses that how do you even program that? Because I know I don't have an iRobot. Maybe you do, but like,
no. One of those vacuums, right?
Yeah. Does it work?
We used to. I thought it was not very
That's
good.
just one task.
Yeah. And they were old school, right? We got one a number of years ago, and I think they've now gotten better, but like, it would get stuck. It would run out of battery. Like, it'd get stuck like hopping up on the carpet. So like, we had hardwoods and then like this carpet like kind of around our TV, and it would like get stuck on it, or so it wasn't very good. So I don't know. I think those things are.
Yeah, and I think the successful products are the singular.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of this really expensive litter box for cats? I forgot what it was called, but it's like $1,000 litter box that turns like a
scoops,
like a cement thing. Yeah, and the cat goes inside it and it automatically scoops. Or I don't know what the process is, but that's what I found is the new products that come out to market do a singular task, and they're easy to sell. Versus Elon coming out was like, we're going to invent something that does everything for you. Well, what is that?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. That's what it meant by not being impressed by it.
I hear you. I see what you're saying. It's a harder sell. A product that says this can, never mow your lawn again. Okay, but a product that says lawn, laundry, cleaning, whatever, wash your windows, brush your roof off, all that stuff. Like, that's a hard vision to sell. Like, this does everything for you. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and again, does it cost hundreds of thousands of dollars? I don't know how many chores it could do around my house to even, justify that cost.
And with the amount of like metal and stuff in there, it's not going to be, $300. It's gonna have to be a lot. But who knows? Do you buy Apple Vision Pro or do you buy a Tesla bot? What's more useful? I don't know. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see if Tesla can kind of turn it around on this too, because I think it's
my reaction is very similar to the market. Very, very lukewarm, if not negative reaction, right?
And after seeing those Waymos, like, those are cool. And I'm just reading here a little bit further. So it looks like, they're in Phoenix, they're in San Francisco, they're in Los Angeles, and they're in Austin. They're expanding one city at a time. They said it's cumbersome and expensive to move from one city to another. I bet. I wonder what goes into that. Yeah,
and if Tesla wanted to launch, they have to launch at square zero, right? They have to go through these approvals. And do you think San Francisco is going to be willing to listen to Elon Musk at this point?
Well, they probably would launch in Austin first. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair point. Okay, let's move on. Social Security is going up. The wage base is going up in 2025. So that was just released, and we thought we'd give everybody that data point. So in 2024, Your first $168,600 of wages is taxed. Workers pay 6.2%, employers pay the other 6.2%, for a total of 12.4% on the first $168,600 here in 2024. That is going up by 4.4% in 2025 to $176,100. The tax rate remains the same, but the wage base goes higher. So, long way of saying you'll have more of your wages taxed next year by the Social Security tax, and yeah, that's about it. That tax, just for everybody's knowledge too, translates, assuming you're a W-2 employee, that translates into a maximum of $10,918.20. So basically, maximum of 11 grand. Just the simple math on saying 176 times the 6.2%. Once you reach that, you don't pay into the program for the rest of the year. That is why at some point throughout the year, you typically see your paychecks going up a little bit without even doing anything because you've hit your Social Security wage base. All right, next up, Boeing lays off 10% of its workforce. God, Boeing's in trouble.
Yeah.
What are you seeing
Yeah,
here?
we're full of good news this week, huh?
That's true. The next one's bad news too. All right, well, okay. Bad news podcast. Bad news Wednesdays.
All right.
Yep.
So yeah, Boeing workers, at least the manufacturing workers, are on strike, and well, they're a key cog of the Boeing machine, right? Like, if
I would say
they're
so.
in step 1, 2, and 3, you can't do steps 3, 4, and 5 because you got to wait for 1, 2, and 3. So Boeing announced furloughs first, and now they're just announcing full-on layoffs for about 17,000 people. That's 10% of their staff. So if you do the math, there are about 176,000 global Boeing employees. A lot of them are in Washington. So the new CEO, he's been trying to work this deal with the union. A lot of bad blood built up over the years. So the last union contract, they lost their traditional pensions. I don't know how Boeing swung that, but for a union to give up pensions is huge, and now they're regretting it. And I think that's what we're seeing now, where we're not going to agree to anything. We gave up everything to get where we are now, and all of a sudden, anything you're offering just isn't good enough, right? So Boeing did offer 25% raise over 4 years, right? They're not longshoremen here, right? Let's be real. they're only about a third of longshoremen, but yeah, they did not want that. 10 years ago, their traditional pensions were basically retired, meaning you were grandfathered if you were working at Boeing before them. You still have your pension, but anyone coming into Boeing afterwards had no pension.
I remember that. They froze it.
Yeah.
And then they changed the 401k match. They enhanced the 401k match for a period of time, which was kind of almost like buy them out, right? You're shifting risk. You're shifting risk from you to the employee. I remember that. And I was surprised that they did that. Well, not surprised because that's where companies are going, but surprised that they were able to get that agreed.
Yeah, how they did? Boeing threatened to move jobs overseas if they didn't agree to the contract. So it was one of those where rock in the hard place. The union was really in a non-negotiating situation, and now we're here, and the union's trying to overcorrect for. I don't want to say it's a mistake, because to have your job threatened the way it was, I think that's where I would support unions versus the longshoremen. Well, they just want to keep automation out of their workplace, right?
Come on.
This is pretty rotten from Boeing, like C-suite.
I mean, Boeing's also a publicly traded company, right? So, and a for-profit company. So therefore, they're going to be pushing for things like automation and whatnot, which would help them. And I don't know that their unions have any say on that, right? Versus the longshoremen are working for state governments, or do the feds own the ports? Whatever it is, they're working for governments, which are going to be less innovative, I guess I'll say, because they're not trying to meet quarterly earnings and push certain things like Boeing would be. So I think that's a point too. Man, that's crazy though. 25%. I mean, that's pretty good.
That is. But again, the flip side is Boeing manufacturing has been pretty poor, and these are the people who've been making pretty faulty planes over the last few years, right? Again, but have they been pinched so much where they've rushed their jobs, right? Again, if you look up Boeing employees, one's filming other employees, and he's asking them, "Would you fly a Boeing plane?" Majority of them said no. And why produce this stuff, right? Take some pride in your work, but your work has lives at stake. I don't get it.
That's crazy, and that's bad news, and that's a bad look for Boeing. Tangent. I was on a 737 MAX on my way home from Phoenix to Seattle.
Scared to death, right, on the way back?
Oh man. I even
just
saw
hold the door tight.
Hold the door. I upgraded myself to be, because it was like row 21. It's this door plug. I'm like, well, I'm not sitting around that row. I gotta sit in the exit row. I was in like 15 or something like that, far away from that door plug. But then it crossed my mind, and I was like, maybe the 737 Maxes are the safest planes in the air right now.
Correct.
Because those ones were the ones that
have.
Yeah. Well, they've been actually looked at, right? Every single little nook and cranny has been looked at on those planes. So I'm like, at least that's what I told myself during turbulence, and I survived. Well, really, actually, I was stressed on the climb, because the thing blew out at like 10,000 feet or whatever, which I think we all know was a better outcome than it blowing out at 30,000 feet. But anyway, I survived.
Yeah,
I survived.
Yeah. So. Boeing workers, there's a history for that. So a little bit more sympathy, but then they kind of lose it with the manufacturing quality.
Yeah.
Right? Because the union didn't really, when Boeing corporate was going through all this stuff over the last few years, the union was quiet, right? But it was their workers who were creating these planes. So a little bit of accountability here would bring the public behind them.
Are we ever going to get to a place where we don't do, like, this just seems such an antiquated system where we don't get what we want, so we're going to strike, and then there's this big negotiation. You know what I mean? Like, can't this be more
illegal?
fluid?
Those 17,000 jobs are gone because of striking workers, right? It's like there's no ramification, because I know unions will build up a war chest to pay these lost wages to the union reps, but then they don't really make whole the people who just got laid off or announced to be laid off. So the union, for their own self-interest, they're using other people's livelihoods to do it, right?
Right. Yeah. All right. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's, again, we're saying stuff that's going to definitely anger union supporters. It's just, we're seeing an example of two unions striking and impacting other people.
Right. Boeing's also cutting jobs because they're in a bad spot.
Yeah. So
that's fair, right? Unions or not unions, like, they need to course correct pretty majorly. So that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to our last topic on Bad News Wednesdays with Hao and Chris. And we're going to talk about high yield savings accounts dropping like a rock. Is yours dropping like a rock? How many people have opened up and funded high yield savings accounts the last couple of years? I know we have helped so many of our clients do this, whether it's a money market account or actual high yield savings account. And I got a couple of people. So I have a Marcus account. I've said this before on the pod. And I look back over emails. So I got an email on the 11th, so 3 days ago, October 11th, and they said, we have news, your rate's dropping, and it went from 4.25 to 4.1. And before that, I got an email on September 30th, and it said we're going from 4.4 to 4.25. But then I was looking this up in getting my notes in the deck here, They actually dropped the rate on April 3rd from its high, which was 4.5% to 4.4. So let me just say that again in kind of forward order. So on April 3rd, they went from 4.5% to 4.4. On September 30th, they went from 4.4 to 4.25. And then on October 11th, they went from 4.25 to 4.1. So that's been my experience, and what I want you to decode for us is what's going on in the bond and CD market. We know the Fed's cut one time by 0.5%. And actually, the rate's only down by 0.4% over this whole period. So what do you think of this? What do you make of this? Like, is it fair? I just want your insights.
Oh, yeah, it's the banks, right? It's what they can make off those deposits and then pay you your high yield interest in return, right? So
yeah,
if their overnight rate, or the 7-day rate to be more realistic, is suddenly dropping from 5% down to like 4.5%, right? You can't take that loss. Meaning, if I have to pay Chris 4.75 and only making 4.5 on my investment side, that has to correct quickly, right? Or I'm losing money very, very fast, right? You were talking interest on trillions and trillions of dollars, right? So, yes, I think that makes sense, and I think that's what we've been saying, and just giving everyone a heads up about on various newsletters and various podcasts to say, hey, this is fun while it lasts, but don't bank on 5% forever.
Yeah.
And it probably ended a lot quicker than a lot of people expected or hoped for.
Okay.
Yeah. CDs, the 1-year CD now pays 4%. So you could get a 3-month CD for 4.45 and a 6-month CD for 4.25, but you go beyond 1 year, you're getting 4%, which is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Where it's going to be, right? You lock in that 4%, you're good for a year.
Yeah. Unless
the bank puts in a call feature where they say after 6 months, I want that CD back, or I want to give you your money back.
Yeah. I mean, that is pretty good, because the Fed's saying we're going to cut 2 more times this year.
Yeah, lock it in.
So another quarter and a quarter, so half, and then 4 more times next year, so another full percent next year. So 1.5% lower than today. Yeah, locking it in is a reasonable deal. Okay.
Yeah, or the risk there is you lock it in, the Fed says we're done cutting after just 2. Rates say 4.5, which is unlikely, but it could happen.
Unlikely, but it could happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
that's why you don't take advice from us.
As long as you say that I'm not getting screwed, then I guess I'm happy. So
I think anything above 3 is historically in line with good savings rates.
Yeah.
Interest rates.
Yeah. All right.
Zero was the issue.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Last thing I want to mention here is our quarterly market commentary is up. It's up on our website. It's on YouTube. It is a podcast that was also released. And so if you have not listened to that, go on over to consiliowealth.com. In our insights section, you will see the special section for market commentaries where you can see the full blog post that was written by Hao, as well as a link to the YouTube video. And you can watch this on YouTube or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Just search for Consilio Wealth. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to episode 60 of Top of Mind. We'll catch you again in a couple of weeks.
All right. Thank you.